You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Suzan Hixon, founder and CEO of Legally Blissed, business consultant, certified life coach, trademark attorney, and founder of Hixon Law in Kentucky. Welcome in.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. You're doing a lot of cool things, so we're very excited to talk to you about them all.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So Kentucky, huh? That's such a cool place to think about. The Derby, the bourbon, the good time. I know for you, you live there, so it might be a little different. But were you born and raised in Kentucky?
I was actually born in Colorado.
Okay.
And we moved to Kentucky when I was young. But fortunately, I did get some skis on when I was little, and I've loved skiing ever since. And I kind of feel like I belong in both Kentucky and Colorado because we go back and ski every year.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you've been skiing for a long time. I'm from Maine originally.
Okay.
I skied a couple times, but never really took to it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that you're able to have like two places that you basically call home.
Yeah, it is. I'm very fortunate. Then the cool thing about trademark law is that I get to work with clients not just in Kentucky or
Right.
not just in the US, but all over the world.
That's because it's like a federal bar, right? Is that what allows you to do that?
Yeah, well, trademark law, for the most part, for what primarily what I do is federal based because the work is with the USPTO. There are some common law rights with respect to trademarks. And of course, it is jurisdiction based. So if someone wants to file in the European Union, they could, file in the European Union as a whole. But because it is federal based, sort of like immigration law, I can kind of work from anywhere and take clients from anywhere. So it's kind of it's a sweet practice area, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And why I'm thinking about it before we get into like your story a little bit. What do you tell somebody who says, and I forgot what the term is that they use, but they say, I've done this and I could prove it by just showing them that I was like there first. Like some people say like, I forgot, like there's a special word for it that I forgot, but some people say that they can just prove that it's their intellectual property by just saying, hey, look, I did this first. So like,
Yeah, so that really, okay, so that would specifically, if we're applying it to trademark law, in the US, we do honor common law rights of
okay,
use. So if someone starts using it, they generally have common law rights in their geographic territory. They have priority. That's a little blurred, obviously, with the
okay,
internet and how we, move products and services across interstate lines more and more these days. But getting a registration with the USPTO really is ideal because
yeah.
once you get that registration, you have presumptive rights to the mark as of the date that you first started using it or the date that you filed it, whichever one comes first.
Right. And I would like to say that Lawyer Stories does have a service mark. I tried to do it myself, which I know you shouldn't do if you're not a trademark person, but it's up here. It's a service mark, and maybe we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you get it registered? Is it officially registered?
It's registered USPTO. It says
Oh,
Lawyer
good.
Stories. What's your story? I could show
You
it
have
to
your
you.
certificate up there as
Yeah,
well?
it's a little certificate up here.
Okay. So they don't issue tangible certificates anymore. So congratulations on
Oh, really? Since when?
like the last few months. Like what this
Oh, okay. So that's
is
cool.
August of 2020 or 2022. Very, very recently. But I remember years ago when I first started practicing and my clients would get certificates of registration. It was like a fancy piece of paper with like a nice gold seal on it. And it was nice. Like it was something people really wanted to hang
Right.
up. I don't know when yours was registered, probably 2021, or is it?
Yeah, it was probably either 2020, 2019, something like that.
Okay, so you might not have gotten the fancy gold seal, but you could maybe go pick one up at Office Depot, slap it on there with a ribbon or something like that. But like I said, they're not even issuing tangible certificates anymore. It's all digital.
Everything's digital. Okay, well, let's talk about you, Susie. So, like, reviewing your lawyer story, I know you submitted it. I'm excited to feature you. We'll do it soon in the next like week or two. We'll talk about that. So, like, you said that law school for you were hoping would be like an extension of college, right? So I don't mean to bring that up, but I think like a lot of people have that. So
Yeah.
and like one thing I like to ask guests is like, what was the moment? Did you have this moment where you were like, I'm gonna go to law school, I'm gonna be a lawyer? But a lot of people are also like, I'm gonna like continue like going to school. So can you just tell us a little bit about that, like your thought process?
Yeah, I was in that latter category, and I really was envious of people who were really, they really had their goals like outlined, like I want to be, federal judge, like all of these things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was a biology major in college, and I
Wow.
realized after a couple of years, it's like, you know what, med school, the medical field's not really going to work for me. So, I really was I didn't really know what direction my career was going in. So I thought, well, if I go to law school, it will open up more horizons for me, right? And like I said, I thought, well, let's get this college thing on for 3 more years because I thought this was all pretty awesome.
Yep.
It was a little different,
Yeah.
uh, but I generally discourage people from considering law school based on that reason. I feel like people
Yeah.
perform better in law school if they have very defined like goals like that they want around practicing law in the future
Yeah.
versus, well, let's just
Yeah.
let's go into this thing without a really concrete plan like I did. But it's okay. We all kind of go into different directions and bump here and bump there and then kind of
Oh
get back.
yeah, no, totally. I think that's so accurate, and I think that's real too. What you're telling us. I mean, I think it's a real thing that a lot of people, encounter. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And by the way, you have incredible experience being a trademark attorney. I mean, you've done that almost your whole career. You've worked at a few different firms. You had your own firm. You worked for different firms, which is awesome. How did you decide on trademark law?
Sure. So in law school, I remember talking to someone, I think it was at a bar or something,
That's
and
the
they were
best.
like,
That's where all the work
right,
gets done.
that's where
Isn't
it
it?
gets
Yeah.
done. And he was like, oh, you were a biology major in undergrad. I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, you should check out taking the patent bar.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, this looks interesting because I can sort of integrate my science background, which I'm a nerd and I love learning. And so I was like, I can integrate my science background with the law. And so, because, okay, so patent law, just most people here who are listening are going to know or have an idea what that is, but you help people protect their inventions. And to be a patent lawyer and practice in the US as a patent lawyer, you need to have a science background and have passed the patent bar. And let me back up. You should have a science or technology background or engineering, uh,
Wow.
generally a STEM background. So I took the patent bar in law school and miraculously passed it. And so when I got out of law school, I started out as a patent lawyer for a couple of years. And I was drafting patent applications, not in the sciences, but more in kind of mechanical engineering. Around it was around like light fixture designs
Wow.
and this is a little embarrassing, but cigarette implements because I worked in Louisville, Kentucky, and one of our clients was a large national tobacco manufacturer.
Wow. Okay.
Not one of my proudest career moments, but I had
No, but that's incredible experience, right? I mean,
it was,
what do defense attorneys do? So I mean, they do things that.
yeah, 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 yeah. You're right, and it's hey, I had law school loans. I had student loans to pay off, right? Okay, I needed to keep the lights on. So, it was fine experience, Ben, but I learned that I wasn't, I didn't love like working on the same patent application for like weeks on end. It just wasn't, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be doing this
Yeah.
my entire life. And I also knew that I probably wasn't going to be a litigator. Just, yeah, I told you, like, I'm pretty introverted, and I just didn't, I thought, well, I'm going to be better maybe doing transactional work. So I quickly evolved my practice at that point into doing trademark work. And that was actually a much better fit for me, which is kind of odd because I am more kind of a science person, but I actually love the creativity that goes into branding. And I really enjoyed it. I really kind of hit my stride once I started doing trademark work. It was a much better fit for me.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's very technical too. Like a lot of the stuff you were doing at first. I mean, a couple weeks on an application, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, yeah, with the patents, it was very technical, and I realized that I didn't necessarily love working with inventors, but then I started getting a taste of the trademark work, and I got to work with people in marketing.
Okay.
I was like, whoa, this is really kind of more my style. It was a little faster moving, I think, and I was able to pick up, I was working on like 6 different things every single day rather than the same patent application for weeks on end.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. So, Susie, what would you tell somebody who comes up with something like some intellectual property, like, and they want to, they're unsure about whether or not they should go and seek counsel? What would your advice be for someone?
Yeah. Don't use the Google box. To don't rely on the Google box. Really, it's best to go seek a trademark attorney or a patent lawyer,
Yeah.
because they will help you, even if they're not specific to, like, maybe they don't specifically do patent law, but they're a trademark lawyer. They're going to know enough to be able to recognize the various intellectual property assets that you might own. At this point, I've noticed that so many IP lawyers, really are getting more specialized, like even in their practice areas. Like 20 years ago, patent attorneys would do some trademark work, right? Or trademark attorneys, if they also were a patent lawyer, maybe they would do some patent work. But I think that attorneys now are really just digging into their specialty. So, if you go to an attorney and they're an IP lawyer, they'll know enough to be able to say, hey, this is like a patent, you may be eligible for patent protection, and would be able to give you a really good referral. But I think it's really important to speak with an IP lawyer when you think you do have intangible assets,
Okay.
because they can help kind of parse them and work up like a game plan for you in terms of protection.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's good advice. Thank you. So tell us about tell us about Legally Blissed. This is something you launched 2 years ago, about 2 years ago. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I feel like 2020 was kind of a period where a lot of people, including lawyers, kind of hit the reset button. A lot of us reflected, thought, what am I doing? I'm just pounding the pavement. Is this something I want to continue doing? And it's not, like I said, not just lawyers, but people in a lot of different careers really took a moment, I think, to reflect and hit the reset button in some respects. In 2020, I proactively slowed down my practice. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a little leisurely in 2020 and not freak out about it. Nice. And I kind of liked it. It's not doing anything now. It was just hanging out, but it was one of those situations. I think I tried to take it as an opportunity to reflect on my practice and where I wanted to go going forward, because had at that point kind of approaching not quite 20 years of practice, but we're getting there. Say over 15.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say like I hit this midlife crisis in my career, but I did want to take the opportunity to think very mindfully about what I wanted to do next. So I ended up going to the life coach school, which is a life coaching program offered by Brooke Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really good experience. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a great life coach. A life coach is great for helping people realize or recognize their own thinking generally holds the answers to their challenges, right? Mm-hmm. As a lawyer, I come to you with this, I got a solution for you, right? Or I've got 3 strategies, let's pick one and work together. So it's definitely wearing a different hat. But I got my life coach certification in 2020, and I learned a lot at that point about setting boundaries, being better about saying no, being able to be more aware of my own thinking. And I was like, how can I really apply this to lawyers? Because I knew that implementing some of that work in my own practice made me happier as a lawyer. So Legally Blissed sort of was birthed around that time. And I started out doing coaching and consulting. And I quickly realized that the best way for me to ultimately scale up what I wanted to do and work with more people was to have a community for female lawyers. And I generally work specifically with female attorneys around mind management, goal setting, boundaries. Yeah. So that's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you really get started with it? Like getting the word out about what you wanted to do and starting to build your community. This is super interesting.
Yeah. So like you, I think conversation is very important. And one thing I wanted to do was give female lawyers a platform to tell their stories. So part of the reason I started my podcast, which is called Legally Blissed Conversations, it was a little selfish because I was like, I want to talk to these women, right? I want to know their stories. Like I want to know what obstacles they've overcome, how they did it. I want to know what their success stories are and what their failures are, because I think that's just as important. But of course, I also wanted to give them a platform to share their stories and kind of an outlet. And also, I would say about 50% of the women that I speak with are not practicing law anymore. They're offering other services. And I wanted to give them that platform to be able to offer their services to other people. And of course, I look at podcasts as sort of like a win-win-win. It's a win for the interviewer for the reasons I just spoke about, and the interviewee, but also for the audience, because the goal is that they always take away at least a nugget, right? Or something that they can implement to help them move forward. And, the podcast is really about female attorneys telling their inspiring stories to inspire those who might be just a little step behind them.
Right. Got it. No, that's great. I think, so like, obviously you like being a podcast host, like, what was your first couple episodes like? And like, what's your favorite thing to ask a guest?
Yeah. So I love podcasting. I honestly love asking questions and learning about people. I am much more comfortable doing that than talking about myself. Despite lawyers loving to talk about themselves, right? But so when I look back on it, the first episodes were definitely bumpy. It's funny, kind of like we were talking about earlier, there were times that, where I asked someone, how do you pronounce their name? And I still mispronounced it during the podcast. So I'm thinking that we're going to have like a bloopers reel at some point. That would be fun. But we just wrapped up the first season. I have
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so ecstatic about it. So many amazing women have been on the podcast who've told just incredible stories. Season 2 start on September the 16th. We're taking 2 weeks to kind of reflect and iterate on what we can improve next season.
How many episodes was season 1?
Season 1 was 24 episodes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I think we're going to stick with about 24 episodes per season, because if you think about it, if you take 2 weeks between each season, that kind of gives you 52 weeks.
Yep.
Am I doing the math right? Yeah, the math part was hard for me in undergrad.
No, me too, but I hear you. You're trying to,
right?
Yeah, I hear you. That's great.
But yeah, I've got a lot of questions that I ask most of my conversations are very natural and, free flowing, but I do like to know what inspires people. I think that's real important. I like to know, sometimes I ask, like, what do you think you're unnecessarily tolerating in the practice of law? What can we do better to help young lawyers?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
So I think this is really interesting because, you said a couple times you're an introvert, and then we go on to talk about your podcast. So, where you're putting yourself out there, you're recording yourself, and let's face it, like, millions of people can end up listening to Legally Blissed podcast, right? So, like, as an introvert, like, what have you learned about yourself, like putting yourself out there and being on a podcast, being a podcast host, excuse me?
Yeah. So I had a podcast before this one, called Trademarks Made Easy. And so having had that experience made the entry into this one a little bit easier. But when I did my first podcast, I did not want to hit submit, right? I did not want to publish because I was very self-critical. And yeah, the thought of being exposed to a lot of people is kind of scary. But one thing that's really helped me, I think, is, I don't know if it's necessarily an introversion thing or just kind of that fear of failure, right? The fear of screwing something up.
Yeah.
One thing I try to tell myself is, my content is valuable and people need it. I'm doing people a disservice if I don't provide the content. That kind of helps me get over that fear of getting the content out. With respect to introversion, I had no problem in 2020, like hanging out at my house and reading books.
Yeah. I don't think that's right. I mean, look, I think a lot of people viewed it as a time to, like, just kind of, it was like a break. I mean, I know that sounds kind of crazy. I mean, I was working from home and doing what I had to do, but I think a lot of people sort of, like you said, you hit it right on the head. I think people reset, decided which direction they can take things in. I think society's saying, like, we don't want to work 9-to-5 jobs anymore. Like, we don't need offices. We don't need physical offices to go into. We can work at home and be just as efficient. And the bosses, they need to trust that you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yes, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a little rant, but yeah, I don't think you're alone there with, just sort of reading books and liking sort of being home and, oh, I can't go out. Oh, that's too bad.
Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, I can't make that party. Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
and I'll tell you, there's nothing better than a good Zoom happy hour.
Yeah, right. We got really great at that. Yeah, I don't know. I do hope that if there's any good that comes out of 2020, it's of course my community, but also the way that we think about work, right? And the way that we think about how we value our time and money. And because, one thing I really harp on a lot, and I have to remind myself that, there's nothing more valuable than time, right? Money is not as valuable as time because we can make more money. We can go make more money, but we can't make time. If we miss our little person's recital, you could never get that back. And those are the things that I look back that, I regret not going to a soccer game or a softball game because, I worked, and I'm like, I don't want people to have to make that decision.
Yeah, that's so true. I just saw a TikTok reel, and this guy was saying like the same thing about time, and just sort of like not working full, and doing not working for a company overtime and all that, because in the end, you're replaceable, that sort of thing, but
Mhm.
you can't replace those moments. And yeah, I think everything you're saying is spot on. So tell us, Susie, who inspires you?
Okay. That's a great question, Ben. That's what I ask the people in my podcast. Um, who inspires me are the women who have been on my podcast.
That's
Honestly,
awesome.
they are the ones who drive me. I have women on there are um, who homeschool their kids and practice law, which I
Wow.
think is really amazing. I have had two women who are breast cancer survivors
Wow.
who, after they went through their treatment, they made some major life changes around how they practice law. And I think that that's really inspiring. But it does concern me that it takes something like a breast cancer diagnosis for someone to, kind of have to have that reality check,
Yeah.
right? Especially around having practice law, because we know how stressful our careers are.
Hmm.
Um, so that's really who inspires me. The women that I have on my podcast, the women that are just doing it every day, that are just living their lives and kind of doing their own inspiring things. I have had several women who have published books, who are published authors. They teach, they're law professors. Um, One thing I'm working on right now, this is going to sound a little nerdy, but bear with me here. And this might be something that you might want to think about doing too. That might be kind of interesting, is going back and looking kind of at your data from all of your interviews and seeing kind of what you can pull out in terms of kind of stats, right? So when I look back at this is an example, when I look back at the women who've been on my first season, um, just over 50% of them still practice law. And that
Hmm.
was kind of the thing that I wanted to feature: women who are still practicing law and women who are doing
Yeah.
things, right? But the cool thing is 100% of those women that I interviewed would consider themselves a success. And I want that to resonate with people, because I want them to understand that we don't have to make being a lawyer our identity. I mean, unless we want to.
Right.
And we can be very cautious, conscious of that, um, how we kind of self-identify, and with that sunk cost fallacy that I notice a lot of people have, where, I spent a lot of time in law school and I still have law school loans I have to pay off, or I worked 7 years in big law. If I don't practice law anymore, it's all going to go to waste, right? And
Right.
I've had people say that to me before when I've said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to practice law anymore." But you've invested so much in, and all this. It's like that
Right.
is such a we have to be very, very careful, I think, with that kind of thinking.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. So what about mentors? Like, do you think that that's an important piece of being a lawyer, or doing what you set out to do in life?
So I like this question, Ben, because I've had mentors throughout my career of varying, um, how would I say this, like kind of varying levels of successful relationships. Most of the mentors that I had when I was earlier in my career were sort of assigned, right, at the law, like the law firm, like, you had,
Oh
if
yeah.
if
Right.
you're in a particular practice area, like this was just kind of your mentor. I think that we have to be really careful with that type of more organized mentorship. And I think that the best mentor mentee relationships are those that are formed organically.
Okay.
And so in my community, one thing about Legally Blissed Community is that it is mentor led, but it's not structured. So people aren't assigned mentor mentee relationships. And the hope is that through the different programs and events we do, that those types of relationships will form organically.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think you have to be somebody you have to be comfortable around your mentor. You got to be able to open up and be a little vulnerable, right? You don't want to really,
Yeah.
sometimes people don't want to do that to somebody that they don't feel respects them or whatnot. So I think that that's a great opinion. I think it's so important, mentors, especially in the legal field, if you can get one. Um,
Yes.
so important. Um, so so like back to legally blissed. Sorry, I just have a question. So like, what are some methods that you would use um, to help women like boost self-confidence in the courtroom and like at the boardroom table? I know you talk about confidence. I think that's so important. I think that's super cool that you're doing that, trying to instill confidence in women.
Yeah. So this is something that a lot of us think we lack, and we think that um, we're either born with it or we're not, right? Kind of like that Maybelline commercial from the 80s. I don't know. I'm probably older than you. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe
Oh no,
maybe
I remember that.
right?
I'm definitely at least 5 years older than you, believe it or
Okay, I don't know about that. I don't know.
not.
Let's not talk about it. Um,
Offline. All right.
I'm like, yeah. But we both remember that commercial, right? So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people think, okay, well, if I wasn't born with self-confidence, then I just woe is me. I'm just not a confident person. But that's
Yeah.
really kind of a incorrect thinking, because confidence, I think, is something that is a skill that can be learned. And of course, like sometimes we feel more confident than at other times. Like I know that my confidence level ebbs and flows, right? Just kind of like my
Sure.
like how I feel on a given day,
Yeah.
kind of 50-50. But there are a few different things that I like people to think about when they're working on their confidence. And the first one is, their own mindset, right? I think that we are really bad about self-deprecating talk, and even in ways that we try to make it funny.
Yeah.
Like, God, I'm such an idiot. Or, things that
Mm.
we say
Yeah.
really onto yourself, and notice how, like, you wouldn't say that to your best friend. So why would you say it to yourself?
Yeah. No, I think that's so good to point that out because I've caught myself saying things like that, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to put that out in the atmosphere, even if I'm really like thinking that right now. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
think that's so important to like to face that and to talk to people about that, talk to women about that.
yeah. And that's a really great point that you just made, that, just saying it and putting it out there is, we just have to watch ourselves when we do
Yeah.
that. And I think that lawyers really have a tendency to be very hard on ourselves. We're type A, we have perfectionist tendencies. We get really angry if things don't go a certain way, and we blame ourselves a lot of the time. So just really kind of watch that negative self-talk. um think about Muhammad Ali, right? What did he say? He would say, I am the greatest.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go around and say that all the, we don't have to be like, I'm the greatest. But
Right. Right.
he did that to, you kind of, talk himself up. And I think that we can do that too. So whenever we notice those negative thoughts coming in, just see if there's a way that you can kind of course correct.
Yeah.
You don't have to go from I am the crappiest human ever to I'm the greatest, but maybe you can go to I've got this shit, right? I've got this. And maybe that's all you need to kind of help you switch that lack of self-confidence a little bit.
Well, I think that's interesting, and it kind of gets me thinking about an article that you wrote and posted on LinkedIn like maybe a month ago,
Yeah.
that had to do with boundaries. So I thought that was very interesting. Like how you can, it's sort of like that thing where people say you have to teach people how to treat you.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So like you wrote this article, it's on LinkedIn. You have a great LinkedIn page. I hope everybody checks it out. And like you have all these like and some nice blog posts. We'd love to put one on our website too, by the way.
yeah.
So like, why are boundaries important, and like how can we show people like what our boundaries are?
Yeah. So I feel like setting boundaries, I think we kind of do it before we even know what it's called. It's only kind of recent that for me, I was like, oh, this is what this is. I'm setting boundaries with people. And it's very much treating people how they interact with you. One thing I like to talk about a lot is how we set boundaries around client interaction and training your client, or even for, how you speak with your prospective client or work with your prospective client, and how they access you and how responsive you are to them.
So important.
It really is, Ben, because it will help your sanity. People, this is something I harp on a lot. I am a big believer of attorneys first. Your mental health is the most important thing. If your mental health is suffering because you're working on a client, you have to let that client go. Like you have to.
And I feel like the client contacting you too much, or like trying to email, text you, call you, all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, there are ways that you can kind of prevent that from happening, or tattle that a little bit. Is, first of all, when you, perhaps in your engagement agreement or your engagement letter, you explain like when they can contact you. Now, different areas of law are more conducive to this.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And different, if you're right out of law school and you're working in big law, it can be a different beast. And I get that. I was there.
Sure.
So I'm lucky that I can talk about this because I've seen both sides. If you're to the point where you don't think that you can handle it, or you don't like it, right, that you can't set those boundaries, then maybe you need to think about a different practice area. Maybe you need to think about transaction over litigation, or contract work over criminal work, that type of thing. But I think that having that information in that initial contact with that client is super important. And then also being very careful about how quickly you respond to clients and when you respond to them.
Right.
Now, 15 years ago, when I was a baby lawyer, it would have been awesome to respond at 9 p.m. or on a weekend, right? But there is not really a badge of honor in that. I mean, I think especially now, as we've kind of evolved as a society and we looked back at how we're practicing and working, don't be, really think twice before you respond to an email late at night or on the weekend to a client.
Interesting.
Use an autoresponder. Like, even I'm a big fan of like, don't check emails on the weekend. Of course we cheat. Of course we kind of, every now and then we're like, we got to look at this email from Bill and see what he has to say. But be very careful about sending that email on Saturday afternoon. Is there any way that you can schedule it? Most email providers have schedulers. Schedule it for Monday to go out. That's a good way to sort of it kind of tame your workflow too, because if you send it on Saturday, you're going to get that email right back. And
I think I just want to be clear, and I think I think it's good for in the interest of your mental health to be doing this, right? Because I think if you start emailing somebody too quickly, they're going to think that there's no boundary and they could just email you at any time. They're going to want an answer at 1 a.m. So I think it's not about not being responsive, obviously, to the client. I think this is obvious. It's about setting those boundaries and not letting it creep in, because if you have to keep emailing back and forth with a client, and then all of a sudden you're not responding after 5 minutes, they're going to say, where did you go? And it's just like, well, hey, I'm with my family, it's all about in the interest of your mental health, really.
Yes. In creating those expectations.
Right. Creating the expectation.
Yeah. And you setting the tone of the relationship, not the client, because there will always be more clients. And if you are working with a client that you kind of vibe with and that you can really provide a great service to, they'll refer you, right? These people that are harassing you at like 3 a.m. on a Sunday, like, they're not good clients, and they're never going to send you good clients like them. So I kind of look at it as it's not really that big of a loss.
Right. No, I think that's I think everybody can learn from that, no matter what you do for a living, really. I mean, I think that's setting boundaries is a thing that I think we all could think about it. And I do like, I'm sort of like trying to shuffle through my head, like, who's good at like delaying the response to sort of let me know that they're, they're not like a person who like immediately texts back and they only are going to I think it's super interesting. And that's a great point, Susie. Thank you for sharing that info.
And be very cautious. Be very cautious about giving your phone number to clients.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I understand that's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But especially now that many of us are not working in offices where there's like an office number, but we tend to all have personal cell phones. Just
right.
Very proceed with caution.
Yeah, no. So I have a question. So like what advice would you give someone who is thinking about working with a certified life coach, but is sort of unsure if that's the direction that they should take or not?
Yeah. So one thing I say about coaching versus therapy is that therapy is really great for helping people come from a low place to kind of baseline. But coaching is really great for people who want to kind of up level their career or whatever it is they want to work on, right? Whether it's their health or achieving a particular goal or a career transition. Having a coach is really great in the situations where you're kind of wanting to up level something.
Yeah.
And coaching is great too, because like I said earlier, the accountability is great, but also coaches really work to help their clients see that the answers to their problems are really already inside their head. So I think it's one of the magical things about coaching. It's why I have coaches. It was actually one of the hardest things for me though, when I was being trained as a coach, because I've always worn an advisor hat, right?
Right,
and
right.
It was different because I was having to ask different types of questions where, I was trying to dig into someone's kind of their own thought pattern. And really what a coach does as well is helps us see what thoughts are really just deeply ingrained social constructs that we think are facts, when in fact they're just stories that we've told ourselves over and over again.
Gotcha. So is there anything you can share with, just a couple more questions. Is there anything you could share with us about sort of living in a healthy mental space? Like any tips? I know that's like such a broad, difficult maybe question, but is there like sort of like a daily thing that like we can do, or is there any type of advice that you have? If not, we can move on.
Okay. Yeah. So I have just a few I think that really help me. So I do try to spend 30 minutes a day just writing or journaling because
I like
it's really helpful. So they say that if you have like a chitter chatter brain, right? Like your brain is just, full of stuff.
Yep.
That one way to really help calm yourself is to write. And then the great thing about writing also is you can kind of look back at your writing and see what it's cool to be the observer of your own thinking, right? And that's kind of the cool thing about writing is it helps you become the watcher of your own mind. And then you can look back and say, okay, that was just a crazy ingrained thought that I had, or this was actually a fact.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think is really important, and it doesn't really have to do anything super technical, but just getting outside, I think is one of the most important things that we can do. And getting your feet in grass. Have you heard of something called earthing? I don't really do that, but have you heard of this?
No.
It's like you go outside and you like standing in the grass for I just call it going out barefoot.
Okay.
And standing in the grass because it feels good and just connects you to nature.
What about the sand? Is that like, can we stand in the sand?
You can stand, yeah, okay. You can stand in the sand.
Right. Well, you're in Kentucky, so
I'm in Kentucky.
Yeah, that doesn't really,
yeah. We have lakes and rivers with sand, but ocean.
All right. Well,
Or the snow. You can go stand in the snow.
All right. Barefoot. That would get
Barefoot.
cold.
I've done it.
So
Brings you up.
So let me, so first of all, tell us what's next for Legally Blissed.
Okay, so we are getting ready to send out mentor invitations, and we're getting ready to hit autumn of 2022, which is mind blowing to me. And in October, we're going to launch to the public. So yeah, I am really excited about it. It's just a private mentor-led community. And the goal really is to help transform female attorneys into better self-advocates, because one of the things that I noticed, Benny, was that female lawyers tend to not be, we are great advocates for other people, but we are not for ourselves.
Oh, that makes tons of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And by the way, like if you ever see anybody on Lawyer Stories, like on the feed that we feature on a podcast, somebody that you think we might be connected to, I'd be happy to make a warm introduction. So don't hesitate. We have a lot of amazing, I know you work with mostly women. We have a lot of amazing people out there. So just let me know. We're going to stay in touch. And is there anything else that like we've left out that you want to convey to the Lawyer Stories community today?
Oh, I think we just told my entire life story in 45 minutes. So,
all right, there we go.
No, I think, I know that I've said I'm an introvert, but I do like to consider myself a warm and approachable person. And if anyone has questions or, wants to talk about Legally Blissed and how that might work for them, like just please approach me.
Awesome. That's great. Well, anything we could do to help, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for coming on and sharing everything with us. It's going to be a great one. So you stay right there.
Okay.
And everybody, thanks for tuning in. And wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.